Look, why don't I introduce to you our guest co-host this evening, who is Andrew Eborn, who is a barrister and futurist.
Thank you, and it's a joy to be a happy autumnal equinox.
Is that what it is?
It is. No, we missed that. Night and day is the same length, and it happens on September the 23rd.
Oh, that's why Chuck came in and said...
That's what happened. That's why the blinds are down and we can't see it. It's also, I can tell you, Nintendo's 134th birthday.
Is it?
Nintendo, which is fantastic.
Yep, I've got a Nintendo.
And it actually started 134 Nintendo, but they started out as a playing card company.
Oh, okay.
And they then involved... And also, Bruce Springsteen,
sense.
the boss, it's his 74th birthday, so happy birthday to both of them.
And that's all happening...
All happening now, isn't that great?
That's so cool. It's not cool that it's becoming autumn and winter. That's boring and rubbish. But...
Yeah, it is boring and rubbish. So book your ideas up, right?
Yes.
Because that was one of the least...
Don't want the winter.
I'm sorry, Andrew. We're trying to get the numbers for Saturday night.
Is that right?
And the birthday of Nintendo was at best an uninteresting...
I'll tell you the great thing about it as well.
No, it's not great.
The great thing about it as well is autumn, people are the most fertile.
What?
I know, it's true. So if you have your babies now...
And he's talking about that there.
And if a baby's born today, it's more likely to live to 100 than if it's born any other day. So,
No way.
There you go. So all the babies born today... Yeah, it's true. We've done that. Research.
Wait, hang on. So when would they have had to get cuddly?
Whenever they switch the television on.
I mean to have had a baby.
No, we're not having this. We're not having any more of this, right? You two.
Oh, it's fun.
As I've often said, there's a place for fun and jokes, and it's not my show. Okay. So look, Russell Brand.
Yes.
Look, I'll just read it out. Russell Brand has broken his silence. Honestly, this man breaks his silence more often than I break wind. But anyway, he's received a large number of allegations of wrongdoing. I have to say, and I said this on the radio show the other day, I honestly believe that if you go to the media, it's a smear, and if you go to proper authorities, it's an allegation. And remember something, whatever he's done or whatever he hasn't done, we can't arbitrate that in this studio. The only place you can arbitrate it is through the proper courts. And I absolutely have to say, I was furious with Caroline Dinenage, the chairman of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, officially designated as a Conservative Member of Parliament. No more Conservative than Mao. But anyway, she obviously had a go at him and wanted him to be cancelled from various media platforms as a result of the belief that she had the right to do that in a position as a select committee chairman. But anyway, Russell Brand has broken his silence once again, third time. Let's watch what he's had to say.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Obviously, it's been an extraordinary and distressing week, and I thank you very much for your support and for questioning the information that you've been presented with. By now, you're probably aware that the British government have asked big tech platforms to censor our online content, and that some online platforms have complied with that request. So please follow me on Rumble, because that's the only way that we can keep our voice. You can go to rb.rumble.com to support me directly and keep me and our channel independent. And I need your support now more than ever, and more than I ever imagined I would.
If you have an hour this week, you can learn 100 songs on the piano by learning just 4 chords. These.
I'm going to say that for sure.
He looks worried about money.
And he's, no, and he's been quiet for a week. That's the first time he's spoken since the allegations a week ago.
Does not speaking for a week constitute having a silence? I mean, it doesn't really.
Well, it does if you normally speak every day.
All right, fair enough. I'll accept that.
He has a show, he speaks every day.
I'll accept that. Let me just say this to you, Andrew. First of all, I'm going to ask you to confirm something that's very, very important.
Yes.
Right, first of all, if you go to national newspapers, if you go to national television channels, if you take money, which, by the way, the people who accused Russell Brand didn't, but if you take money to sell your story, if you hire a PR man before you go to the police, and if you get your book deal before you go to the police, the first thing that's going to happen in court, you're going to be asked about that. Now, that doesn't make you not a victim of crime, but it does undermine your credibility.
Yeah, and it's all about credibility. And the bottom line is this, is that everybody is entitled to be assumed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you love Russell or you hate him, you share
That's how
his
I
views,
feel, yeah.
You think it's a conspiracy theory or not, until you go through a court of law, you're innocent till proven guilty.
And yet, Andrew, for most people that I see on social media, for most people that I see actually in other media channels and other television stations, Whether they like him or whether they do not like him is what causes them to say, I think he's innocent or I think he's guilty. And I find that risible.
It is completely, not only risible, it's completely wrong.
Yes.
And you cannot, and however wonderful, must not, until you know what the facts are. And the bottom line is also, Magna Carta, go all the way back to Magna Carta, Article 39 of that says you can't rob a person of their right to earn until it's been in front of a court.
Yes.
So when people start taking away the income...
this makes me a bit uncomfortable,
No, you can't do it. It's that simple.
The other thing is, I've had two friends who've been involved in these sort of celebrity rape trials. And the reality, I have two friends who've been done for rape, but okay. But actually, both were found not guilty. But on both occasions, it was too drunk to consent. It was, we had a few drinks, you had a few drinks.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, in those cases, I got the impression, and I can't speak for everybody, that everyone thought they were telling the truth. And it becomes incredibly difficult, and I'll tell you why. Because everyone agrees what happens.
Yes.
We're drinking in a bar. Then we went back to your place. Then we did this. Then we did that. Everybody agrees on that. Everybody agrees that they think they're in the right. Everybody believes themselves to be telling the truth. Yes. It becomes almost impossible for the courts.
And I think there's two important points to make as well. There's a difference in criminal proceedings and civil proceedings.
Yes.
Yes.
And what's going to happen if you say things about anybody, there's a risk of defamation. You saw that with Trump, with Ian Jean Carroll fairly recently. He had to pay millions in defamation. What happens is the balance of probabilities is the test for civil cases, which is not
which means what?
It means it's more likely than not. The balance of probabilities that it's defamatory and so on and so forth, that they're telling the truth. In criminal cases, it's a far higher threshold. It's beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Which is why sometimes, you might remember Johnny Depp on that sort of stuff. And so no criminal charges at all.
Yep.
Over here, for defamation, he lost his case.
Yes.
Over in the States, he won it. And you had to look at that sort of side. We have to be very, very careful, because it's not just people throwing allegations against Russell. It's also people who tweet and that sort of stuff.
Because how is he expected to get a fair...
Absolutely. And that's what you need to work out. Absolutely. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are, nobody's above the law. But what you have to be careful of at home as well is if you're commenting on it, you could yourself be potentially liable for defamation.
What about this situation that we're in as a barrister? I think it's really important to delineate this. And I appreciate that this is a complex issue for a lot of people, but... We're seeing increasingly these select committee chairmen believing they're the government. Yeah. You had Tobias Ellwood, who's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Look, it's really simple for people to understand, I think. You know, obviously your MP is the person that passes laws, that legislates. It's a legislator. Then there are some people that are in the government, like the Prime Minister and others. Yes. But there's these people who are on select committees. And what a select committee does is scrutinises government departments. That's what they do. Right. They're publishing reports to see if government departments can operate better. The idea that the chairman of the Culture and Media and Sports Select Committee will begin effectively sanctioning somebody accused of a criminal offence, I think it's despicable.
And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I host the podcast for the Royal Television Society, and we had our conference in Cambridge where we had the head of the BBC and the head of Channel 4. All were questions about Russell Brand. And there are loads of questions about the procedures in place to make that make sense. And I always say that trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback. And we need to make sure that our broadcast institutions have transparency about how they deal with these. Many questions, but we have to proceed in a very, very cautious way.
And be thoughtful of the victims.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because
victims or alleged victims, how you look at it.
However you
but
look
certainly,
at it,
there are people out there who are suffering similar sort of things, maybe at other people's hands and so on and so forth. We need to be very, very sensitive to how we deal with that.
It is frightening to think that you can be completely convicted via media without any...
And that's wrong. But all praise, however, to the Sunday Times and also to Dispatches. I saw both of those incredibly valuable institutions. Investigative journalism is my favourite type, and the teams there are world class. So that's good. But as I say, the basic principle, however, is you must innocent until proven guilty.
When should we step in as the media? And when should we leave it just to the police? And I suppose what I mean by that question is this. Normally, we wouldn't publish the name of anybody, wouldn't talk about the name of anybody until they were charged. It's not a law, but it is something that we generally do. But obviously, people in a position of power tend to get away with these things. So at what point do I decide to give the name?
Not that I ever disagree with you, Andre, because you're superb, but it is in fact a law, and there is a contempt. Thank you. but apart from that, that's subject to being wrong. You were right. The Contempt of Court Act means that it's basically an offence if you interfere with with the course of justice.
Yeah, so what will happen in this scenario
So
then?
it depends on when there's an active trial. So he's not yet been charged, so there aren't actually active proceedings.
So once
the
there's
rules
an active
change.
trial, everybody's got to stop
And you
talking.
might remember Gary Neville, for example. He commented during the Ryan Giggs case, and Ryan said that's all gone now.
Okay.
But he commented, and there was a risk because he put out a tweet about bits and pieces. It was during the trial when Ryan Giggs was going to happen, and they threatened basically Gary Neville with contempt of court. And there's huge penalties, and also you can end up in prison.
Well, I'll tell you the other example that was really interesting. I was really worried about.
You won't end up in prison because it's not in a prison cell.
It's the situation with John Venables getting this parole hearing. Now, I believe that I know something about John Venables after he was released, which, if you knew about it, you would be shocked by it. But obviously, it would be a criminal offence for me to talk about that. Now, what continually happens in the case of Venables is the Bulger family continually go to court to say, we want to talk about what happened to him after he was released. We believe the public have an interest in that, and we believe if the public knew what we knew, they would be appalled by the behaviour of the parole board, which actually, in this case, now is being empowered to look at the matter again. But that becomes incredibly difficult because
they're not allowed to say that.
People watching this at home and listening are going to go, what the hell's he talking about?
Well,
and the answer to that is I can't tell you.
And you have to be incredibly careful. And I say there's two sides to it. One is the defamation side, which is if you defame somebody, you lower them in the minds of right-thinking people, there's an action against you personally, and also the various organisations that you might work for. So you have to be very, very careful. The criminal side is that everybody's entitled to go through due process, and only the evidence which is relevant for that particular case should be taken into consideration.
Yes.
So the appropriate way of doing it, if you do know something, tell it to the right people who can then make sure it's taken into account. Don't publicise it, because otherwise you'll lose your house and other bits and pieces as well.
Yes. See, that's scary, isn't it?
It's really
all very scary, I think.
It's really shocking. Yeah, I mean, I worry about the whole thing. And by the way,
should it be demonetised, do we think, then?
Let's get ready to rumble. No, absolutely not. We love that Ant and Dec in our good old days.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. You cannot. As I say, it's Magna Carta. Your right to earn an income can only be taken away from you
when due
process.
Yes, but what about my right if I was Google, say? What about my right?
If you were Google,
to say,
I wish you were Google.
But what about my right to say, well, I don't want to associate in a business context with these people, because as you know, every single contract that anybody signs in a commercial environment has a clause which says something like, if you commercially embarrass both of us, we'll just throw you out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And any good lawyer would argue, I'm going to find a good lawyer. If your contract says that, you should have spoken to me. The reality is this, it's got to be fair. And if you don't go through a court of law and you don't go through the due process, it's wrong to take away your things. But certainly, in most contracts, they will say if you fall into public disrepute, then it works on that basis. At the moment,
but what is
the
public
evidence
disrepute?
is not fully there.
What is public disrepute in 10 seconds?
Very simple. If you're falling down in estimation of right-thinking people, having gone through that process, that's falling into disrepute.
So it's not being smeared?
Well, it could be being smeared, but there's a right and a wrong to it, as I say.
OK. Thank you, Andrew. Are you all right with that?
No, you're all right with that.
OK.
And your house is on the market, so it's got to be good. You want to buy his house, get in touch.
Stick around, because we will be talking more about the Braun scandal after this.